Welcome to Kicking Your Teens Troubles to the Curb with host Christina Nation, the ultimate guide for parents navigating the challenging yet rewarding journey of raising teenagers. Join your host Christina as she dives deep into the world of adolescence, tackling everything from academic pressures and social dynamics to mental health and independence. So please, welcome the host of Kicking Your Teens Troubles to the Curb, Christina Nation. Welcome to Kicking Your Teens Troubles to the Curb with host Christina Nation, the ultimate guide for parents navigating the challenging yet rewarding journey of raising teenagers. Join your host Christina as she dives deep into the world of adolescence, tackling everything from academic pressures and social dynamics to mental health and independence. So please, welcome the host of Kicking Your Teens Troubles to the Curb, Christina Nation.
Good morning and welcome to Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb. I'm your host, Christina Nation, and with me today is my guest, Dana Baker Williams. I'm super excited to introduce her to you as we have a great conversation to talk about today. So Dana Baker Williams is an ADHD and anxiety coach who helps parents navigate the chaos, big emotions, and challenges of a neurodivergent family. She combines personal experience with neuroscience based strategies to help parents reduce disruptive behaviors, navigate big emotions, and foster stronger connections. Through personalized coaching, small groups, and speaking engagements, Dana equips parents, teens, and adults with practical tools to meet themselves and accept where they are with confidence and grace. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to have you. So we have, a difficult topic to talk about today, and that is anxiety in teens, and also how anxiety and ADHD often go hand in hand. So I'm really grateful to have you here so we can learn from you. So let's just start off with a little bit of how you started doing this work.
Yeah, I started this work actually in a roundabout way because I had gotten sick. I was working and traveling a lot, and I got sick and came home, stopped working, and I have two kids, and one of them, my daughter, seemed to be struggling, in my opinion. She would have problems transitioning. If anything changed in her schedule or what the plan was, she would melt down. She couldn't remember dates, times, phone numbers, even if she's called her friend every day, which she did. So I went to the school and tried to ask them to help and see what was wrong and all the rest. But everybody said she was fine. She did well in school, she paid attention, all the things.
Hmm.
But I just didn't feel that. Like I just knew something was wrong. And eventually we got her diagnosed and or tested, and she has ADHD, anxiety, and some depression. So that includes like a working memory issue, which is why you can't remember dates and numbers. It's a processing issue, so there is a slower speed, so that it's hard to have transitions quickly without expecting it.
Hmm.
So anyway, since I couldn't get any help, I was able to get her help because we put her on medication and got her a therapist. But there was no coaching around then, so there was nobody for me and my husband, and we were kind of not on the same page without a parent until we got this diagnosis. And um, so I just decided that I couldn't possibly be the only person feeling so isolated and scared and worried who was going through this because you
Hmm.
get a big paper of diagnosis, and it's overwhelming. So I thought, okay, well, I can't be the
Yeah,
only
yeah,
person. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to learn everything there is to learn, and I'm going to start coaching and writing. I started with writing actually about it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So let's just start kind of from the beginning. What some of those, you talked about some of the signs that your daughter had, but what are some common signs and symptoms of anxiety that parents should look out for in teenagers?
Yeah. Teens' anxiety can be sneaky because it often shows up as physical complaints like headaches or stomach aches, um, or being too tired. It can show up as perfectionism, as avoidance, right? So if they don't want to go to school or they don't want to get their homework done, that's often can be anxiety. Perfectionism, where they won't turn something in until it's perfect, which causes sort of procrastination as well. Those are
Hmm.
all, or constant need of reassurance can also be a sign of anxiety, as could sleep problems. But a lot of this also can
Right,
overlap with ADHD. Um,
right, right.
so
Yeah.
anxiety for our kids isn't always that worrying that we think of it. It can be anger or irritability or just zoning out. So it's
Mhm.
hard. You got to really listen hard and dig underneath to figure out whether what it is that's causing it.
Right, right. Yeah, so it can show up a little differently in teens than we think in adults, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because an adult does one of two things. They just talk about their anxiety or what's bothering them, or they
Mhm.
internalize it and don't share anything, but also generally they're not going to just shut down and shut you out.
Right.
But teens have a hard time knowing what they feel, right? So
Mhm.
that's a big piece of the teens is you don't have sometimes they don't have the vocabulary to say that it's anxiety. They can just be like off, right? I'm just in a bad
Mhm.
mood. I'm just this. It's everyone else's fault. Um, because they're just not as tuned into themselves and they're not necessarily able to pinpoint, oh, this is why I'm acting like this.
Yeah.
And adults generally are.
Yeah. So if a parent is recognizing some of these symptoms and signs that you just discussed, then what are some first steps that you would recommend they take?
So I think the first thing I'd say is get curious
Mhm.
and include your child, your teen, in the discussion of, I see that you're frustrated. I see that you're angry. I see that you're not really doing things with your friends anymore. What's going on? If they're not doing their homework, instead of just saying, get your homework done, or why aren't you just doing the damn homework? You say, what about this makes it feel hard? What are you struggling
Mhm.
with, right?
Right.
Because anxiety can stem from, biological factors, brain chemistry, genetics. It can do it from academic pressure. Um, it can be from neurodiversity as well, social dynamics, social media can cause it, right? Comparison. So there's a lot of areas that can come into play. And I think to be able to help, you first have to figure out what it is that's at the root cause of it. And for some, if
Yeah.
it's an anxiety disorder, you're not going to necessarily know what it is, because the difference between an anxiety disorder and just being anxious, feeling anxious, is that one is going to end, right? So I'm anxious about being on this podcast. That's going
Mhm.
to end when the podcast is over. If I'm just
Right.
anxious about every little thing and I don't know what it is, that's more of an anxiety disorder.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
And
so you mentioned, yeah.
I was just going to say, a high achieving teen is the other thing to look out for, when they are fine until it drops.
Yeah.
So find out what is underneath that, and don't assume it's just because they don't care or they're being lazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes it goes unnoticed because our teen may be doing well in school, like you mentioned with your
Mhm,
daughter. I noticed the same thing with my daughter that she did well in school, so we didn't really notice that she was kind of struggling with a dyslexia, because
mhm,
she didn't seem to struggle too much, but then she started to as she got older, it became more apparent and more right.
mhm.
So that can happen for sure. So what do you think are some of the underlying causes or triggers of anxiety in teenagers?
Well, it's funny you say trigger, because I was just gonna say, what one of the things that I have my clients do, is keep a log, of when their child gets into a tizzy, in a meltdown, angry, whatever those signs are, sad, pull inward. Um, Keep a diary of that for a couple weeks, because we'll be able to see patterns from that, and you may be able to learn a lot just from that. Um, I do think that most of the anxiety these days comes from academic pressure.
Mm,
And it's not always parents that are putting the pressure on. Sometimes it's just an expectation in the family, and you grow up with it, and so you put the pressure on yourself. Or if you have perfectionism, you put the pressure on yourself. Um, I think that's important. I think family stress can really lead to anxiety, and not knowing, if you have a temperamental parent, for instance, or if you're living in sort of some volatility, you become hyper vigilant. You're always watching out. So that makes your person be tense, right? Like you're feeling up here with all the edginess and vibing. And I think that can just come from family dynamics. And then fear of rejection, social anxiety. Comparison is the thief of joy, right? You watch all these kids on social media, and they seem to be having this perfect life, and you don't. Or you see your friends on social media doing things with each other and not you. So those types of things can cause a lot of anxiety as well. The what ifs, the why am I not good enough? What's wrong with me? Why do I stand out? And then of course, big transitions. So that could be a divorce, it could be puberty, it could be college. Any of those things also can cause anxiety and cause the body to feel anxiety.
Right, right. Yeah. So, can you share some effective strategies that might be helpful for teens, or coping mechanisms that they could use to kind of manage their anxiety?
Yeah, I did a workshop on this recently, and I think that the first thing I usually do is tell them about taking 3 deep breaths and breathing
Mm,
out as hard as you can. And it sounds so simple that people are like, "That's stupid, that's not gonna work." But it does work because it
mhm,
shuts down your nervous system. It calms down the nervous system really quickly. Um, Another thing would be mindfulness things like 5, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercises, or yoga, or writing down in a journal how you're, each day, how you're feeling, what's bothering you. I think naming it is important.
mhm.
So figuring out what it is that you're feeling. My anxiety is saying this to me, right? Because you can't always listen to what's in your head. Every thought you have, especially with anxiety, isn't necessarily true.
Right.
So the other thing we want to do is reframe, help our kids reframe a thought. So she didn't text me back. She hates me. Option. What else could be true? Maybe
Mhm.
she's eating dinner. Maybe she's got doing homework. Maybe she's sad and doesn't want to talk to anybody. Like, there are a million reasons for something. And trying to learn not to just attach a negative to a meaning in your head, right? Watch
Right.
watch your attachment. Um, if you can, don't get hooked on either praise or criticism, because
Mhm.
then it's all outward, right? So you really want to pay attention to what you're feeling and figure that out. And then my favorite, if I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, is a brain dump.
Mm.
And brain dump is you set an alarm, whatever, for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes if you have a lot of stuff on your brain. And you take a pen and you just write everything down, not in sentences, not as a task, just everything in your head gets put down on paper. And then when you're done, you feel so much lighter, A. And B,
Mhm.
from there, you can do different things with that. You can look at it and figure out what you can control and what you can't control. You can look at it and see, are there tasks here that I do need to get done, and make a task list? Is there somebody I should be talking to about some of this stuff because it's bigger than I can handle by myself, right?
Mm.
Having them learn to ask for help is super great, because
Mhm.
people grow up thinking it's not okay to ask for help, right? You don't want to seem
Right.
weak. You don't want to be a burden, any of that stuff. And then for parents, the really key thing is modeling. So
Yeah.
all of these tools are great for the teens to use, but if they see you using them when you're anxious, or even if you're not anxious and you want to teach them something, you can pretend you're anxious. I think modeling is really the way to go. And
Yeah.
one other idea actually that a lot of my clients, my younger clients, like, is having a worry time. 10 minutes a
Mm.
day, 5 minutes a day, certain time of day. You get to sit and ruminate and feel all your feelings and hear them and give them space. And then
Mm.
you have to kind of close the door and leave them out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
s That can be really
Yeah, I
helpful too.
love that. It's so important because we don't necessarily want to push away all of our feelings, and so giving them that space, acknowledging them, noticing them, but then being able to move on and let them go, right? And
Right.
like
Yes.
how you were mentioning earlier too, I know for myself when I was younger and struggling with depression and anxiety, um, that and definitely perfectionism, like you said, that
Mm-hmm.
perfectionism often goes hand in hand as well. And for me, it was that is how you talked about that negative thinking and ruminating on those negative thoughts. And so learning to reframe them was so important for me, and really took a lot of work and a lot of practice
It
to
is.
do, right? But I did also like I think it was Dr. Amen's Killing the Ants. So the ants are those automatic negative thoughts, right? And so how you, yeah. So I love that analogy. And, killing those ants then is first, like you said, noticing them, naming them, and then, challenging them. Are they true? Is this really true? Or
Right.
like you said, what else could be true, right? And taking that time to reframe that, and it doesn't have to be something, way out there that's totally unbelievable, but something else. Yeah, like you said, like with, feeling like that you're gonna fail a test, a lot of times we can have that catastrophic feeling where we're like, I'm going to fail this test. I'm going to fail the class. I'm going to fail high school. I'm, never
Yeah,
going to
just
be
going.
successful. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it can infiltrate all these little things can infiltrate your whole system, right? So that then you're just
right.
convinced that, oh, I'm going to have this issue forever. And,
Mhm.
and you won't when you learn to control it. And also, asking for help, right?
Yeah,
Having the parents get their kids help is also really good to do. Some people
yeah.
with anxiety have to take medication because it's more genetic and, a brain chemical issue. So there's a lot of things you can do for it. And
Mhm.
I think it's important to note that we can't get rid of it.
Mhm.
Like that's not the aim in calming yourself down or reframing it. It's not to be like, I'm never going to feel anxious again, because we all have anxiety. And honestly, it can be very helpful. It may keep you studying for that test, or it may, kick into gear when you need it to help you get through something. Um, so it's not really, you don't want to let it sit with you all the time, but you also don't want to kick it out and not feel it and shut
Yeah.
down. Um,
Mhm.
and then the other thing I will say to the parents is don't give in to your teen's anxiety. So
Yeah.
if your teen is scared of a dog, doesn't want to go to school, whatever those things are, don't start avoiding them. Don't let them off from school. Don't walk on a different side of the street to the dog, because what you're saying then is you're telling the anxiety, yeah, you're right to be anxious, right? This is
Yeah.
a real threat. But you're also doing is saying to your child, I don't think you can handle this.
Yeah.
And we don't want to
Yeah.
be telling our kids that. We want them to
Yeah.
think and know that they can handle it. So taking over and fixing things is not
Mhm.
always the best idea as a parent.
Yeah, and that is such a great point, and I definitely want to get into that more. We do need to take a quick sponsor break, but let's revisit that conversation when we return. So this is Kick Your Teen Troubles to the Curb. I'm Christina Nation, and with me is Dana Baker Williams. We'll be right back after this sponsor break.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career. doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hello, and welcome back to Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb. I'm your host, Christina Nation. We are streaming on Bold Brave TV, and with me today is Dana Baker Williams. We've been having a conversation about how anxiety shows up in teens and how to best support our teens who are struggling with anxiety, possibly ADHD, possibly perfectionism, possibly,
All of
kind
the
of some of
above.
the things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, Dana, you were talking about how, sometimes anxiety shows up and our kids, don't want to go to school. They want to, or they're scared of the dog, and you're talking about how sometimes as parents we avoid these situations, or we try to rescue or fix for our teens, and how you were talking about how that might not be the best course of action. And so I'd like you to go over that again and explain how it could be harmful and what we should do instead.
Sure. I think there is a common issue we parents have, which is it's a struggle to watch your kids struggle, right? It's hard to watch them going through a tough time. It's hard to watch them melt down. We could either sometimes get frustrated and angry. Other times we jump in to fix it for them. And that fix it for them, well, actually both aren't great, but the fix it for them is a big problem because we need to teach them how to fix this stuff themselves, right? As parents, we're trying to raise adults who know what they're doing, how they're feeling. They can self-advocate. They can handle these things. And if we jump in every time that they have something to handle, then they're not learning how to do it. And you don't build confidence by having your mom say, "Oh, that was a great job." You build confidence by doing something, however small, and succeeding at it. So by fixing things, we're taking that option away from them. We're not giving them the time to figure out how to problem solve and think things through. And we're also saying to them, "We've got you," which we may be thinking is wonderful, and they're going to be hearing, "She doesn't think I can do it. This anxiety is true and real. I should be feeling it because look, she's avoiding it or she's coming to do it for me." And that is not the signal that we want to be teaching or sending, right? We want our kids to feel competent and confident, and they have to struggle and figure things out in order to build that resilience, to build perseverance, to build confidence, all of those things. So we're doing a disservice. We're doing something nice for them in the short term that in the end is actually a disservice.
Right.
And also with something like school, if they just stop going to school, it's not going to be a phase that comes and goes. It's going to be, "I don't want to go to school." Okay, let's not go to school. Okay, well, A, it's against the law. be your kid needs to go to school. So once you've started letting them stay home, it's very hard to reverse that.
Yeah.
So, there are ways you can do little bits of something to help them through it. Um, but you want to keep making those steps so that they are getting through it and learning to cope with it on their own or with your help. I mean, nothing wrong with helping them or soothing them or putting scaffolding around them. You just don't want to give in to the anxiety and have them freeze up and stay at home and, miss life.
Yeah. And you brought up two things that I really want to get into more, but first let's get into, so you shared that, we do a disservice if we jump in and fix and overhelp and such. So what do you suggest that parents should do instead, and really what does that look like? So if our teen is struggling, and maybe they're struggling with going to school, or maybe they're struggling with their fear of dogs, and it's really affecting their everyday life. What are some steps to walk them through that and support them without over helping or fixing or rescuing?
Great question. I think the first thing you want to do is realize that all behavior is communication.
Mhm.
So that they're telling you either they're afraid of school or perhaps they're not afraid of school. Maybe something bad is happening at school. Maybe they're being bullied. Maybe they're not doing well. Maybe they're have a teacher that doesn't like them, and you don't think about those things, right? So as a parent, you really want to open the window up to listen, to ask questions, to figure out where the anxiety is really stemming from. I
Mhm.
think that's really important. And to remember that you don't have to fix the feeling, you just have to hold space for it. So
Right.
you have to be a place that your kid can talk to you, a place that will not be judgment, so that you keep that connection always at the front. Um, and then you staying calm is really important because the nervous system is actually contagious. So
Mhm.
if they're in a non-calm state and you just feed that, it's not going to help. So if you're like, oh my God, I didn't know you're scared about this. Oh my God, what are we going to do? That's not going to help them. It's going to escalate it. So you want to take your calm and really make sure you breathe and you're calm before you participate in the conversation because they can catch your calm the same way they can catch your anxiety. Um,
Right.
and I think you have to have days where good is good enough or
Mhm.
of not expecting the world. And if your child is somebody who's a perfectionist, teach them that they don't have to put the bow on it to hand something in, right? So some of
Mhm.
this is leading within that time. Another is sort of short exposure therapy. So maybe they
Mhm.
go to school, maybe you ask questions, and what they really fear at school is gym, right? A lot of kids have a fear of gym and undressing and all that stuff. But again, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't think about it unless you're asking questions and listening hard. So I think active listening, active asking questions, holding space, and then figuring out with them, how are we going to problem solve this? So maybe you go in a half an hour late to school. Maybe you go to school and you only stay an hour the first day. Uh, and like with a dog, my daughter was scared of dogs, and she's the biggest dog lover in the world now. Um, and you do baby things, right? You get a really small dog to come near you, or you carry her down the street with the dog. The next time you hold her hand so she's on the pavement with the dog, but nearby, not actually, on it. So there are ways to do this that are helpful and put that scaffolding around them and teach them that you can handle this. It's not a forever state. Like anxiety will come and go, the feeling will come and go. And then the other thing is when they have successes, you got to celebrate them and point to them another
Right.
time, right? So every small thing, just walking down the street, not screaming, is a win. Going to school for one class because it's your favorite class, also a win for the moment. You want to celebrate the wins, and you want to point back to them, because the next time they're worried and having that same feeling, you can point back to, oh yeah, remember a couple weeks ago when you were worried about this? Look how you came through that. Let's look at what you did that could be helpful, because you're putting back into
Right.
the fact that they had a success. So yes, they are capable of handling this. They've done it before.
Right.
You're
So
saying I'm going to fail a
important.
test. Have you failed every test you've ever taken? No. Did you study? Yes. Okay, then you're probably not going to fail the test. Right? But
Right.
it's sort of a combination of giving them the tools of calming themselves down, giving them the tools to problem solve, which they're going to need as they grow up, because you won't always be sitting next to them. All of those things can be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say, your teen, first they're waking up in the morning saying that they can't go to school because they've got a headache or they've got a stomach ache and they're not feeling well. And then you notice this starts happening more and more often, where they're having these stomach aches, they're having these headaches, and they're missing school. And then let's say you do, kind of, like you said, get curious and ask them the questions, and you do some digging and you realize that there is more going on, especially, if a teen's struggling with anxiety. They could be anxious of just being in a large classroom with others. If they are struggling like with depression, or like you said, ADHD, and they're struggling, you know, sitting still and being able to focus and concentrate. Um, and so a lot of these, anxious feelings come up, and they just feel like they can't cope, and they share this with you. What are some supports that we can put in place as parents? Like, you talked a lot about, how we can approach the missing school, and problem solve around that. But what are some things that we can also do as parents to advocate for supports within the school?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So if they have a diet, it kind of depends. If they're just feeling anxious about taking tests or big classrooms, I think you go to the school and you explain, and you say, how can we partner on this? If they have an actual diagnosis, that's a leg up, only because you have something to point to that you can get them accommodations. Maybe they're do half the math problems at night for homework. Maybe they do an oral test instead of a written test because they freeze. There are a lot of things that you can do that the school can help with if you have a diagnosis. If you don't have a diagnosis, it's more about introducing your child to the teacher. It's more about introducing you their issues and saying things like, this is what works well for her. This is what doesn't work well for her. So calling her out in the middle of class for not paying attention does not work well for her.
Right.
If you go and tap her shoulder, maybe say, you okay? That might work very well for her. Written
Right.
instructions so that you don't forget and you're too scared, because sometimes you go blank if you're anxious.
Right.
So having written directions down on the chalkboard or a piece of paper at your desk. You can advocate in a lot of ways, but making sure that the teacher understands your child and what works and what doesn't work for them is really
Right.
important, because they don't have time to figure that out on their own, because by then your child might be failing or
Right.
struggling. Whatever. The other thing is put them in, find a coach or a therapist as well. If they're ignoring things that usually they used to like to do, if they stop sleeping by themselves, if they stop going to friends' houses, if it's getting in the way of everyday life, they stop going to school. That would be a time to call someone and get them some help that isn't necessarily just you.
Right. Right.
And to look
And
at
and what
medication.
yeah. And so, if you could talk a little bit more about what some of those steps might be for getting that additional support. Who do you recommend talking to first? What level of support do you recommend? Yeah.
It really depends. I would start first with the teacher that they're having problems with. So if there is a teacher that's doing too much homework or speaks too fast and they can't keep up, I think that's where you start and see how that collaboration can go.
Mhm.
One thing a lot of my clients do is set up a back and forth for a while with the teacher. So on email, or if the kids are young, sometimes in a notebook that goes back and forth where the parent can say, this is what's going on. And the teacher can say, this is how they did.
Mhm.
So that you have that communication. But if that isn't working, and then I would escalate it. Well, first I check with the pediatrician. Because if they haven't been diagnosed and that's what you're feeling, then check with your pediatrician and see if they can help you.
Right.
And then I'd go to the school counselor because that's who
Right.
you would talk to about changing classrooms or changing teachers, or if there's a bully in a classroom, making sure your kid isn't in the room for that bully. Things like
Right.
that. Changing gym class. Maybe they can't run, but they could do something else. Being able to go to the library at lunch if there's stress around friends and not
Mhm.
having friends, or there's anxiety around that, maybe they don't have to go to recess, and maybe they don't have to sit in the cafe, whatever it's called, cafeteria. Maybe they can
Yeah.
go to a teacher's room or a calm corner. That's another thing you could do. If your kid's really anxious, I would send them to school with their backpack, but also in that backpack, kind of a calm corner of their own. So that might be headphones. That might be a puzzle. It could be a coloring book. It could be um, good, a piece of something they love that brings them comfort. Any of those things in the backpack. So when they're struggling, they have something to go to that will help them right in the moment. I would also
Right.
should do that.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. So many great strategies, so many ways that we can advocate for our teens. Because, like you said, we want to send the message that they can do hard things, and we don't want to overhelp and run in and fix everything. But we do want to support them and advocate for them and teach them the skills that they need
Right.
to be able to navigate these challenges and learn that like you said, anxiety may always be there. It's not something that we cure. It's something that we learn to manage. So really teaching them the skills to learn to manage these big emotions and learn how to not let it interfere with daily living, and realize that they can do hard things and they can get through the anxious feelings and on the other side and find success in their lives. So it's so important.
It
Last
is.
question. Yeah, yeah. Last question I have for you is, are there any kind of misconceptions about teen anxiety that you would like to clarify?
Yes. Things like they're just being dramatic. Don't be so dramatic. Um, no, they're feeling deeply, right? They're not faking it. They're actually feeling really deeply, and their nervous system overrides their logic and reason. So that just doesn't help. Also, they're lazy. They're not lazy. They're trying to do the best that they can do, and avoidance is just a key anxiety symptom. So it's really
Mhm.
hard if you have anxiety about something, you're going to avoid it.
Right.
That's just common nature, and that's not a character flaw. It's again something to practice. And then just a phase. I mean, it may be just a phase. It may be that they're attention seeking, but generally that's not the case. Generally, they're not going to try to attract attention by being overly anxious. I mean, 32% of teens deal with mental health conditions, including anxiety. So that's a lot of kids with a lot of worries. And I think minimalizing any of those is doing a really big disservice. And the other thing, when we're advocating for them, we need to teach them how to self-advocate. So,
Yes.
at certain ages, you shouldn't be writing to the teacher yourself. Your teen can be writing to the teacher. Your teen can be
Right.
calling the pediatrician. Your teen can learn how to go pick up their medicine, right? You want to be teaching life skills, and that it's okay for you to stand up for yourself and say, this is what I need. It's not being
Right.
rude. You're just saying what you need and asking for
Yeah.
help. And that's a great thing to be able to do.
Yeah, such an important and necessary skill that we need to teach them, right?
And it's hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. So many helpful strategies. Thank you so much for being on the show. Can you please tell our audience how they can learn more about you and your work with parents?
Oh, yes. So as an ADHD and anxiety coach, I do work with parents. I also work with teens and young adults themselves who have those things. So it kind of runs the gamut. My company is called parentinginreallife.org is the address. And you'll find me on all the social medias under some form of parent in real life, parenting in real life, parent in real life. Yeah. And I'd love to hear from any of you. What helps? What didn't help?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. And for my audience as well, if often anxiety and ADHD go hand in hand, often anxiety and depression go hand in hand. So if you are concerned that your teen is struggling with, possibly depression, anxiety, you can go to my website, empoweredparenting.family, and download your free PDF of 10 ways to distinguish between typical teenage phase and teen depression. So you can download that at my website. You can grab my book on Amazon, The Power of Everyday Grace, Parenting Teens with Depression. It also has an accompanying workbook, and that is available on Amazon. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Dana, for being here. And we will see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.
This has been Kicking Your Teens' Troubles to the Curb with host Christina Nation. Tune in each week as Christina features expert interviews, real-life stories, and practical strategies that empower parents to connect with their teens and effectively address their struggles. Here, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.